This is the second chapter of Gravity and Grace by Simone Weil. This is called Void and Compensation. Human mechanics. Whoever suffers tries to communicate his suffering either by ill-treating someone or calling forth his pity in order to reduce it. And he does really reduce it in this way. In the case of a man in the uttermost depths whom no one pities, who is without power to ill-treat anyone if he has no child or being who loves him, the suffering remains with him and poisons him. This is imperative, like gravity. How can one gain deliverance? How can one gain deliverance from a force which is like gravity? The tendency to spread evil beyond one's self. I still have it. Beings and things are not sacred enough to me. May I never sully anything, even though I be utterly transformed into mud. To sully nothing, even in thought. Even in my worst moments, I would not destroy a Greek statue or a fresco by Giotto. Why anything else then? Why, for example, a moment in the life of a human being who could have been happy for that moment? It is impossible to forgive whoever has done us harm. If that harm has lowered us, we have to think that it has not lowered us, but has revealed our true level. The wish to see others suffer exactly what we are suffering. It is because of this, except in periods of social instability, that the spite of those in misfortune is directed against their fellows. That is a factor making for social stability. The tendency to spread the suffering beyond ourselves, if through excessive weakness we can never call forth pity nor do harm to others, we attack what the universe itself represents for us. Then every good or beautiful thing is like an insult. To harm a person is to receive something from him. What? What have we gained, and what will we have to be repaid when we have done harm? We have gained in importance. We have expanded. We have filled an emptiness in ourselves by creating one in someone else. To be able to hurt others with impunity, for instance, to pass our anger out onto an inferior who is obliged to be silent, is to spare ourselves from an expenditure of energy, an expenditure which the other person will have to make. It is the same in the case of the unlawful satisfaction of any desire. The energy we economize in this way is immediately debased. To forgive, we cannot do this. When we are harmed by someone, reactions are set up within us. The desire for vengeance is a desire for essential equilibrium. We must seek equilibrium on another plane. We have to go as far as this limit by ourselves. Then we reach the void. Heaven helps those who help themselves. Headaches. At a certain moment, the pain is lessened by projecting it into the universe, but it is an impaired universe. The pain is more intense when it comes home again. But something in one does not suffer and remains in contact with the universe which is not impaired. Act in the same way with the passions. Make them come down like a deposit, collect them into a point, and become detached from them. Especially, treat all sufferings in this way. Prevent them from having access to things. The search for equilibrium is bad because it is imaginary. Revenge. Even if in fact we kill or torture our enemy, it is, in a sense, imaginary. A man who lived for his city, his family, his friends, to acquire wealth, improve his social position, etc., a war, and he is led away as a slave, and henceforth, for evermore, he must wear himself out to the utmost limit of his strength, merely in order to exist. That is frightful, impossible, and for this reason he will cling to any aim which presents itself, no matter how wretched, be it only to have the slave punished who works at his side. He has no more choice about aims. Any aim at all is like a branch to a drowning man. Those whose city had been destroyed and who were led away into slavery had no longer either past or future. What had they with which to fill their minds? Lies and the meanest and most pitiful of covetous desires. They were perhaps more ready to risk crucifixion for the sake of stealing a chicken than they had formerly been to risk death in battle for the defense of their own town. This is surely so, or those frightful tortures would not have been necessary. Otherwise, they had to be able to endure a void in their minds. In order to have the strength to contemplate affliction when we are afflicted, we need supernatural bread. A situation which is too hard degrades us through the following process. As a general rule, the energy supplied by higher emotions is limited. If the situation requires us to go beyond this limit, we have to fall back on lower feelings, fear, covetousness, desire for record-breaking outward honors, which are richer in energy. This limitation is the key to many a retrogression. Tragedy of those who, having been guided by the love of the good into a road where suffering has to be endured, after a certain time reach their limit and become debased. A rock in our path, to hurl ourselves upon this rock as though after a certain intensity of desire has been reached, it could not exist anymore, or else to retreat as though we ourselves did not exist. Desire contains something of the absolute, and if it fails, once its energy has been used up, the absolute is transferred to the obstacle. This produces the state of mind of the defeated, the oppressed. To grasp in each other that there is a limit, and that without supernatural help that limit cannot be passed, or only by very little, and at the price of a terrible fall afterward. Energy, freed by the disappearance of objects which provide motives, always tends to go downward. Base feelings, envy, resentment, are degraded energy. Every kind of reward constitutes a degradation of energy. Self-satisfaction over a good action or a work of art is a degradation of higher energy. That is why the left hand should not know. A purely imaginary reward, a smile from Louis XIV, is the exact equivalent of what we have expended, for it has exactly the same value as what we have expended. Unlike real rewards, which, as such, are either of higher or lower value, hence imaginary advantages alone supply the energy for unlimited effort. But it is necessary that Louis XIV should really smile. If he does not, it is an unutterable deprivation. A king can pay out only imaginary rewards most of the time, or he would be insolvent. It is the same with religion at a certain level. Instead of receiving the smile of Louis XIV, we invent a God who smiles on us. Or again, we praise ourselves. There must be an equivalent reward. This is as inevitable as gravity. A beloved being who disappoints me, I wrote to him. It is impossible that he should not reply by saying what I have said to myself in his name. Men owe us what we imagine they will give us. We must forgive them this debt. To accept the fact that they are other than the creatures of our imagination is to imitate the renunciation of God. I also am other than what I imagine myself to be. To know this is forgiveness. End of chapter 2.